The Board of County Commissioners acts as a quasi-judicial body when it hears requests for rezoning and conditional use permits. Applicants must provide competent, substantial evidence establishing facts or expert witness opinion testimony showing that the request meets the zoning code and comprehensive plan criteria. Opponents must also testify as to facts or provide expert testimony whether they like or dislike a request is not competent evidence. The board must then decide whether the evidence demonstrates consistency and compatibility with the comprehensive plan and the existing rules in the zoning ordinance, property adjacent to the property to be rezoned, and the actual development of the surrounding area. The board cannot consider speculation, non-expert opinion testimony, or poll the audience by asking those in favor or opposed to stand up or raise their hands. If a commissioner has had communications regarding a rezoning or conditional use permit request before the board, the commissioner must disclose the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place before the board takes action on the request. Likewise, if a commissioner has made a site visit, inspection, or investigation, the commissioner must disclose that fact before the board takes action on the request. Each applicant is allowed a total of 15 minutes to present their request, unless time is extended by majority vote of the board. The applicant may reserve any portion of the 15 minutes for rebuttal. Other speakers are allowed 5 minutes to speak. Speakers may not pass their time to someone else in order to give that person more time to speak.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the February 7th Planning and Zoning Commission. And with that, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And if I could just ask that we bow our heads in a moment of silence, please. Commissioner Tobias?
Please stand and join me in the pledge.
We don't have any minutes for approval. Resolutions, Commissioner Lober?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to have Barbara Wilcox come up if she would. With the students, if you would. I had Ms. Wilcox reach out to my office and propose a resolution with respect to having the county recognize an official kindness symbol. And we're going to do things a little bit differently with your permission. Instead of having me read the kindness resolution, I'd like to have the students read the kindness resolution. Great.
So, can I?
Yeah,
pull
please.
this down? Is it on?
Yeah, do they want to just real quickly introduce themselves too?
Okay. All right. So I'll have them introduce themselves and then they can read.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just tell them your name, please.
Yeah.
Hold on a minute, just tell them your name and then go the other line.
Yeah. Luke. Emily. Autumn. Tyler.
Thank you all for coming out. All right.
Whereas there is a symbol for peace, love, and happiness, whereas there is a need in our schools, our communities, our nation, and our world for more kindness.
Whereas the Tropical Kingdom TK1 from Tropical Elementary School, Merritt Island, Florida, believes that helping others becomes aware of kindness will generate more kindness.
Whereas the Tropical Kingdom determined having a symbol for kindness would help make people more aware of kindness in their everyday lives. Whereas the Tropical Kingdom held a vote to choose a kindness symbol, whereas 983 people from 25 states as well as England and Ireland voted with 52% choosing the kindness all around the symbol of as the official symbol of kindness.
There therefore be its result that the Brevard County Commissioners do proclaim that the kindness all around symbol becomes the official symbol of kindness.
We encourage all parents, students, community members, residents, and visitors of Brevard County to use and promote this symbol of kindness from this day forward. Proclaimed this 7th day of February 2019.
You guys did great.
My 3 friends just arrived. Would you mind if they read their card?
Yeah, please.
Tell them your name.
Jasmine. Whereas the tropical kingdom determined having a symbol for kindness would help make people more aware of kindness in their everyday lives.
Whereas August is my name, and we are, as the tropical kingdom, held a vote to choose a kindness symbol.
My name is Brayden. Whereas 983 people voted from 25 states, as well as England and Ireland, voting with 52%, choosing the kindness all around symbol. I can't find where I am. As the official symbol of kindness.
All right, you guys did wonderful. At this time, I'm going to move that we adopt the resolution as was just read.
Motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
All right,
Congratulations.
good job, guys. Yeah, come on up. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Sure, absolutely.
You want to come down there?
Yeah, I'll head down there. Thank you. Sir, thank you. All right. That's pretty good.
They're adorable. I can't stand them. They're so cute.
Everybody look at me. Everybody look at here. One more. Thank you. I thought so too. It's a good way to start a meeting.
Thank you guys so much. So cute. Okay, we don't have anything on consent. So, let me see, I don't believe I have any public comment cards. Is Mr. Tovey here? Do you see him anywhere?
I saw him earlier. He was in the back in the corner.
He always fills out a comment card, that's why I'm asking. Let me just make sure. Just going to make sure there's not one in here because that's happened to us before. There it is. Mr. Tovey? See, I knew. That's okay. He's holding the door like a gentleman.
Charles Tovey, 2555 Roberts Road, Melbourne. I didn't put anything on my card, but I'm still beating a dead horse, man without a country. I have I forget the name for it, the accused person doing the things to destroy my property, and then you come along and send code enforcement with all these fines for somebody else allegedly doing my damage to my property. I have thumb cards, videos, I have evidence, I have witnesses, and yet I'm still up here looking, asking for help. I wanted to thank Pastor Linkus for his service to our community and wish him a happy retirement. Seminole County, Orange County, and Osceola County have $1.5 million for the Homeless Coalition. Didn't speak on it the other day when I was here. It seems like Groundhog Day for me. Also, sorry about that. I wasn't ready, actually. And Osceola County has also designated 7 environmental areas, and we've been giving our property away, vacating all these properties, and well, we're in need and search of properties now for the environmental balance that we're gonna need. If we don't need it now, we need to look to the future and not give away all our public lands and libraries and parks and stuff. And on the schematics I writ, and it's all about my property and zoning and what to do and what county should I move to. Should I move to another country? What should I do? Should I just call Dr. Kevorkian and say, yeah, I'm not allowed in Palm Shores? And if I do go anywhere, even coming up here, I'm in fear of being corralled some kind of way, and I've been that way for 10 years, and it's evident, and I have videos, and I've filed the legal papers, and we've done this several times, and, well, my time's almost up, and I don't have 5 minutes tonight, do I? Oh, really? Well, I've been living this life for 3 minutes, and I'm not prepared for things, so I'm used to not having conversations with people, socially being, I don't have none of that. I bought a piece of property and moved away from everybody to start my life over, and what I thought was going to be life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness, but it's been not happiness. And before, there was no problems, but when the Palm Shores moved up and the property changed and everything else did, and that was Eels lands behind my property, and that was one of the reasons why I went up there, because it was a pristine area. No one was away. They had a trailer park like OK Corral and other things, and I've discussed it prior, but I've asked for help. Well, am I just going to sell out? I don't have nothing left to sell out. And all the fines and fees and everything, you take everything I have the last time and expect me to pay fines and be compliable. Well, I was compliable before all this extended to the where it is now. And one time I was on the agenda, and I was told that if I come back to the meeting, I would be arrested. So I didn't come back to the meeting, and then it progressed, and it progressed, and progressed. And what do I do? Where do I go? Who's going to help me, or no one? Well, and this is the kindness, right? I'm not a person, and whatever I've done in the past, or whatever my personal issues are, how is that not, you know, I just don't understand how this can be the way it is. And I gave you a piece of paper, Nightmare in Palm Shores, and that's exactly what it is. And every night I have to defend myself, and like last night and Sunday night when the trucks were parked across the road, and semi-trucks, and nothing's ever done about it. But let me have a truck on my property, and they come and tow me and charge me all kinds of fines and fees. I had a semi-truck full of pine bark, semi-truck full of cypress mulch, 100 yards of fill material for, and it's all gone. Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Before we move into public hearings, and I'm sure that perhaps the county attorney's either been by your office or maybe just by mine as we try to figure out how to handle this disclosure issue. There are some commissioners that choose to put their disclosures on whether or not they've met with applicants or people opposed to items as part of the agenda packet, and then there are others like myself who prefer to say it during the meeting, only because I realize that up until the point, and it just happened today, where somebody came up and told me their thoughts on an item that I'll disclose when I hit that item, I hesitated to do the written disclosures only because oftentimes we're adding more and more items to the agenda as we get closer to submission, and that's emails, that's work, extra work for the county, that's did you get the disclosure? It's part of the packet, but did Commissioner and District 5 hand in their disclosures versus why did only 1 and 2? You know what I mean? So for me, I'd prefer to do it that way myself. I don't have a problem with, obviously, each commission office can handle it the way that they want to. I would just suggest that once the agenda closes, perhaps we stop with the submissions of the letters to for the agenda to the clerk, because I think that makes things a little bit tough, because sometimes we get additions to items and they already have to add those, and then when we're adding disclosure after disclosure, it gets a little bit muddy. That's just my 2 cents. So before each item, what I'm going to propose that we try to do, and if I forget, just nudge me or yell at me. Before each item is presented, I'll ask if there's any additional disclosures that Commission wants to make. And obviously, you don't need to speak if you've already made those as part of the agenda packet, or if there's something you want to add, you're welcome to do that. But that's sort of how I'm going to handle it from my end, if that's okay with you guys. Probably a bigger explanation than you needed, but this is the only place we can talk, so. All right, so we'll move to item H1, and I have no disclosures. And not that anybody has to state that they don't as well, but if you do, just light up the panel and I'll call on you. All right, so we'll move on. Is the applicant Mr. Kern?
Hi, my name is Richard Kern, 5963 Stillwater Avenue, representing the applicant Flamingo Land Company. We have read and understand the staff report on the project and request your support for it. It's for a change to Res 4 from industrial land.
And just to clarify, Madam Chair, the item 1 on your agenda is a proposal for a large-scale comp plan amendment. This is the second time that you've seen this item. You all approved it earlier in 2018. It went to the state review agencies. There were no substantial comments requiring any changes. And then item 2 on the agenda is the associated rezoning request to go from IU, light industrial, to RU17. That item has a binding development plan submitted with it, limiting the density to 4 units per acre and requiring a sewer connection upon development. So we'd recommend approval.
Commissioner Lober?
With respect to this, I see it's a D1 item. I really try with any kind of a zoning request, unless there are severely extenuating circumstances, to defer to the commissioner in whose district the zoning request pertains to. So I just ask if Commissioner Pritchett has an opinion with respect to this, if she could let me know one way or the other.
Yes, sir. I would be pleased to. I think it's amazing what you've done with a piece of property that's been so hard to figure out how to develop, and you've come along with such a great plan. I really love this. I'm in full favor of this item. Both the items complement it together. And on that, if it's appropriate, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. Do you want motions on them separately, ma'am?
Separately, yes.
So if that's good, Commission, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve item H1.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett, a second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And item H2, I believe, is the item that Ms. Stark already explained.
Yes, ma'am. So I'd like to make a motion to approve this with the BDP, with limiting development to 4 units per acre and providing for the water and sewer.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
the third item on your agenda is a proposal by LTM of Florida Holding LLC, represented by Kim Rozanka, requesting a change of zoning classification from GU to RU212. This item was heard most recently at the January 7th Planning and Zoning Board meeting. They're in some negotiation with Palm Shores and some litigation with the county, and they requested at that meeting that they be tabled to the March 11th Planning and Zoning meeting, which would then lead you guys to potentially table it to April 4th Board of County Commissioners. So we recommend tabling.
April 4th.
Make a motion to table to April 4th.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett to table till April 4th and a second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Item H4 on the agenda is a proposal by Alberto and Bibiana Roman, represented by Ralph Kennedy, requesting an expansion of a CUP for alcoholic beverages for full liquor for on-premises consumption in conjunction with a restaurant in a BU1 zoning classification on .24 acres. This is on the corner of Grove Street and Tangerine in the Merritt Park Place subdivision of the Myra area.
Does anybody, Commissioner Lober?
If we could have that after.
Okay, well, does anybody have any disclosures? Okay, go ahead.
Actually, I do. I apologize. I do have one disclosure. I see one here. I see that my staff, not I, had fielded a call, it appears to be earlier today, in an email from Eddie LeBron with respect to this particular item.
Great. So you're Ralph?
Yes, I'm
Can I
Ralph
have your-
Kennedy, 4727 Old Trail, Merritt Island. I represent Alberto and Bibiana Roman on the property at 170 North Grove. It was previously a restaurant. It's been closed for a number of years. Been 3 different types of restaurants there. It has existing conditional use permit for beer and wine. The current owners are the owners of El Tucan Mexican Restaurant on Sykes Creek Parkway. They have an unlimited liquor license that they can transfer to this parcel. Their current restaurant would be eligible for one of the state exemption licenses that they're going to apply for pending this approval. So that's the request.
Great. Go ahead.
Okay, with respect to this, overall I like the idea. I think it's a good idea. My one concern, and I'll bring staff into this if I may, I spoke with Aaron about a concern with respect to parking. And at this point, if you could articulate what your suggestion was as far as the nature of a prospective parking analysis and what you think would be beneficial from your standpoint in better enabling you to evaluate that this is a good thing, which I think eventually is going to be where we're at. Could you give us a little info on that?
The conditional use permit report necessitates that staff look at the infrastructure in the area. And so we did an evaluation of parking, both on the existing building, and then there's a concept plan in the package. It's not a binding concept plan. It's just an idea to demonstrate what they intend to do. It shows some improvements to the property as well. So there's a proposed expansion of the building, and that expansion would necessitate parking improvements. So there are some deficiencies in the parking for the existing square footage of the building, and then if that were to be added to, that could potentially be exacerbated. So the Merritt Park Place is a very parking challenged area, and our code doesn't give us a lot of flexibility in evaluating that. So, you know, we put some comments in the staff report that there may be multiple mechanisms in order for the staff to work with the applicant and figure out how to get there with the parking. And that's up to you all if you want to see more from them. He can elaborate on that.
Let me ask you just as a quick follow-up, and I promise I'll give you an opportunity.
Thank you.
I want to approve this, and I don't want to be unreasonable to the applicant with respect to this, but I also want to make sure that we go through and do our due diligence with respect to evaluating this. If, based upon your understanding, as the county code now reads, is parking that's shared with other entities nearby something that's evaluated when you look at a set of plans that's being proposed for something like this?
If an applicant doesn't have the ability to meet the parking criteria on their private property, we have tools that allow them to share parking with other owners, and those are formal parking agreements. Those agreements are for spaces that those other properties have that are above and beyond what their use requires. So in Merritt Park Place area, there's a lot of daytime businesses and some nighttime businesses. Unfortunately, we don't have a code that allows us to count the spaces twice a day. So it makes sense when there's an empty parking lot across the street to be able to use it, but we really need to see some detail on exactly how those parking agreements might come to fruition. So I don't know if maybe they've done some work with their neighbors. I think at the Planning and Zoning Board, they spoke about some work they've done in that area.
So let me just follow up with respect to that. So ideally, and again, I'm basing it on what you've said now as well as the conversation we had in the briefing with respect to this item, if they were to have something from an engineer indicating that an appropriate change to the code for us to consider would be to factor in that additional parking that's not necessarily immediately on site or immediately adjacent to them, is that something that you think would be beneficial in terms of being able to evaluate that they do in fact have ample parking or sufficient parking for what they're proposing?
I'll let Tad take the code change questions because we've just gone through a parking code change process, so he can answer.
If I may, Commissioner. So, typically when we look at a zoning item, we don't get into that level of a parking review because we don't have a plan that indicates all of the infrastructure improvements that they would be making. So in this case, what we looked at was the concept plan that they proposed. We see that there appears to be a deficiency of 13 parking spaces. So when we look at the site plan that they presented, it doesn't appear that there's space for them to provide those on site. So that would be the challenge that the applicant would have to provide. Obtaining the approval would be demonstrating how they're going to satisfy that parking. If your concern is that they demonstrate how they're going to satisfy that parking as part of this approval, the parking code has a mechanism for them to identify shared parking. It also has a mechanism for them to do a parking study to where they could look at the shared parking, they could look at multiple modes of transportation. They could also look at the trip generation and the parking demand and demonstrate that our code requirement is not consistent with what they need, and then they could present that and we could take that into consideration to make up or to demonstrate. They could either show how they're going to make up the 13 spaces or show us that the 13 spaces weren't necessary.
So let me ask you, Tad, just a couple follow-ups with respect to that. The 13 parking spaces that you've identified as being deficient, if I understand correctly, again, based on prior conversations that we've had about this item as well as what I've heard just now, those 13 are on the basis only of the expansion. So if there was a prior deficiency, that's not being held against the applicant when you're saying 13 in this case, is it?
That is correct. So the parking code says that if you're expanding a use, then you have to provide for that the parking or the infrastructure for that expansion. The existing deficiency would not be accounted for. However, through the conditional use process, that is something that the board could take into consideration, but that is not what we had identified.
And again, I apologize for being at all repetitive. I would like to approve this, but I want to make sure we go about it in the right way. Not looking to create any undue burdens for anyone, but let me ask from your perspective, Tad, and if you want to jump in, Aaron, that's fine as well, whoever feels like responding. Do you think it would be beneficial, or do you think it's unnecessary from your perspective, based upon items that you reviewed in the past, as well as the specifics of this, for them to potentially get with you if they're amenable to tabling this just to the very next zoning meeting to determine if there is in fact sufficient parking, which there may well be. I just don't know.
I believe that for them to develop the property as they've indicated that they wish to, the parking will have to be addressed. Whether it's addressed as part of this application or as through the site plan process, it would have to be addressed. If it is done in a way, or if the solution is beyond our administrative authority, then we would bring that back to the board for consideration. So at some point, it's most likely something would be coming before you.
Right.
And so a tabling for that may be actually a time saving for the applicant, because it would be something that we would have to account for at some point in the process.
So you said would in fact be a time saving?
Potentially, yes. If They have to address the parking. It's either they address it through this approval or they do it through the site plan.
Okay. All right, I apologize for
That's okay.
the back and
That's
forth. I
okay.
want to give you an opportunity as well.
That's okay. I don't agree with everything they're saying, Commissioner. Merritt Park Place has allocated on-street parking, sponsored under a MIRA program, built by Brevard County to alleviate parking problems in Merritt Park Place, and that's the area we're talking about. It's an area between South Courtney, or North Courtney, excuse me, 520, Merritt Avenue, and North Tropical Trail. That's Merritt Park Place. Particularly on Grove, there's quite a number of on-street parking places. The restaurant, as we agreed to at the P&Z meeting, will only be open at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Every business on that street closes at 5. We have, since the meeting, gotten letters from La Casa Assisted Living Facility. They have an 18-spot parking space that's not used at all in the evenings. We've also have a letter from Merritt Assembly of God Church immediately across the street on Grove to use their parking for employee parking in the back. Just along, they have 12 parking spaces on their property direct, and just along Grove Street, within a half a block distance of the corner, there's 35 on-street parking spaces that are open to anybody to use in Brevard County. Additionally, we have verbal approval from Dr. Corliss of Island Animal Hospital to use his parking, and he's not even half a block to the south. It's a downtown area. It's downtown Merritt Island. It's not anything unlike Cocoa Village or downtown Melbourne. People find a place to park. Legally, I think we've addressed the issue. We feel we're going to submit as part of our plan handicap parking. We need at least 2 parking spaces that would accommodate. The addition that's shown on the plan is only 465 square feet, and it's a front porch to build a new handicap ramp off the front of it. If it's got to go away to accommodate that, the owners have acquiesced to say, fine, we'll figure another way to make the handicap ramp work. We feel there's more than ample parking in the area. And again, there are no open businesses in the evening, so they're not in conflict. They're only going to be open Tuesday through Saturday, closing at 10 o'clock at night. This is why they put the on-street parking in Merritt Park Place, to be able to alleviate those issues. And because these are all small properties, originally all single-family homes for the most part. Yes, there are some commercial businesses that bought larger tracts. I developed one of them. But for the most part, they're all former single-family homes that were turned into small mom-and-pop businesses. That's Merritt Park Place. None of these people could survive if you held us to the same requirements as you do in Vieira. We couldn't do it.
Yeah. And I understand where you're coming from with respect to that, but I want to make sure that my concern is clear. And I'm not looking at, nor do I think it's appropriate to hold folks accountable for whatever the pre-existing condition might have been at the time that the code was put in place to require a certain amount of parking. And I get at least the impression and my understanding from Mr. Calkins and then also from Aaron is such that there is potentially already a deficiency as to the existing structure, which I don't think is fair to hold against you in the sense that the requirement was put in place after that structure was built. That said, though, it's still troubling to me when I hear that there's a potential deficiency, or that it's not a potential, I guess, from the department's view, there is a deficiency moving forward with the parking situation as it is. And as I said, I want to approve this, and I think eventually, yes, sir.
Well, Commissioner, I guess my question would be, we're asking for a conditional use, not a zoning change or a mod to a development plan. We're asking for an additional conditional use to add alcohol to the property. It already has a conditional use for beer and wine, and they could go back and reopen as they were under the beer and wine. We're just asking to add that additional conditional use. We're not asking to change anything else to the property. If the addition of the 465 square foot porch is a problem, the owners have said, we'll delete that porch. We're just trying to dress up that west end of the property and figure out another way to accommodate the handicapped people.
Well, as was said, and again, correct me if I'm wrong if you would, Tad, this is a hoop that's going to have to be jumped through either now or down the road with his department anyway. Is that a fair summary, or am I incorrect?
If they are expanding the building, it would require a site plan, and at that point, the parking would come into question. If they are not modifying the building and they're leaving it and they're doing it in the same footprint, then it would be just the expansion or the change in the alcohol license. However, because of the conditional use application, parking is one of the things that the board needs to determine that they satisfy the concerns. So then you would be looking at, does the addition service, if you will, increase the capacity of that restaurant to where it would necessitate additional parking?
I appreciate that clarification.
And I just want to clarify real fast, and I'll get to you, Commissioner Tobias. Those letters from those additional businesses weren't part of the file until recently, correct? Like, that's new information?
We have never seen those letters or reviewed.
Right, I think he just got those, correct?
Those. So that's the thing that staff would need to check, whether or
Right.
not those parking spaces being agreed to be shared can be shared.
Right. And perhaps, you know, if we need to fix that problem, if the business isn't open, I can't see how them having extra spaces would even come into play, because they would all be available technically. I think it'd be a very difficult thing to measure, but at the same
If that
time, there has to be
business
some
was
common
open
sense in there,
and
too.
If a business was closed and they were to do a shared parking agreement and give all their parking away, and they would not be able to open anything new in that business, and that potentially is very binding for that property owner. So that's certainly up to that property owner, but we haven't seen any documents that show that anyone has done that yet. The existing building as well, the conditional use that's on the property right now identified 72 indoor seats and 22 outdoor seats, and there are 7 improved parking spaces on the property. 7.
I believe, Commissioner Isnardi, if I may, the parking study would basically identify how they're going to satisfy that requirement. They may, the letters may, once we have that information and we can review it, it may satisfy the concern. We're not saying that it won't.
Yeah, because
We're just saying
I don't
we
know
just-
how any downtown business, I mean, the fact that that business has 7 is pretty amazing, because I can name about a dozen downtown Melbourne that have 0.
Yeah, and
Or they
they're-
may only have 2 that are dedicated or signed that are to that,
But they do
dedicated to that
have
property.
space
so.
on their property and on their concept plan that shows area that could be improved on their property and at parking added on their actual property.
Right,
So
and
they
that would be up
they
to the
have that.
applicant to decide if he wants a parking lot as part of his business, too.
Not to interrupt, Commissioner,
really.
but it would be, I'd fall back into the same pit, and trying to improve that is how am I going to address stormwater?
Correct.
And I couldn't address the stormwater on a parcel this small. So I'd fall back into, if I tried to improve that parking, which is why it was probably never done. And
Right.
it's, again, it falls in, all these little businesses, all there in Merritt Park Place, all will fall in that same.
Exactly, I don't know how we hold you to that same standard when we probably haven't done that before. Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is a question for Tad, with your indulgence. Yeah. Tad, when were the requirements for the number of parking spaces, when did that get codified? Is that a recent thing, or is that?
The recent requirement was, or I should say the current code requirement was done in 2013, I believe.
Okay. I'm just looking at the impact of ride sharing on parking, and I'm sure you're familiar with the research there. It shows that the need of parking is down 15 to 20% in downtown areas, and that number even gets larger as evenings. I guess people use ride sharing more in the evenings. I don't know. I'm not one of those folks. But does our code take that into account as people tend to get rides there more than what they would otherwise park there, or is that not taken into account in our?
So what's unique about, the code looks at the entire county and the uses, throughout the county. So the requirement is established on an average, in the restaurant this particular requirement is one space for every 100 square feet. That's what the code requires for a restaurant. That requirement was based on research that looked at what all the other counties do, what the cities do within Brevard County. It looked at the ITE manual for parking demand, and it also looked at the time, 10 recent restaurant submittals to see what the applicants were proposing that they needed from a market standpoint. And then we looked at, well, where do those lines intersect? And the closest point was the 100 square feet. So that's how we established it.
I get it. And just to be clear, though, that was 2013?
Correct. But
and ride sharing is up
yes,
a
sir.
factor of 7, 8, maybe more in that. I understand technology moves faster than government, but
I believe our code does have the provision to account for that, and that is through the parking study, whereas we realize that we're looking at it at a high level, and there are instances in the county, and there are going to be some uses where the 100 square feet may not be applicable. And that's why we developed in our code a provision for a parking study where they could look at a specific use or specific area and bring those matters into account.
And help me, thank you. That would be the applicant's, obviously, duty to pay for that parking study. Help me, how much would that run, a small business?
I'm not sure what the cost would be for that, but it would be the applicant to submit, or for the applicant to give us those calculations.
Okay.
Okay, I don't have any idea either what a parking study would run. I'm certainly going to look that up after this meeting, so I have an idea moving forward. That said, I've not seen any of the letters. I don't doubt that you have them. I don't doubt anything that you said is accurate as to the best of your understanding, but I also don't doubt that anything staff has said is accurate to the best of their understanding. That said, Mr. Tabaya raises a good point with respect to ride sharing, perhaps making what was enacted 5-6 years ago perhaps less than fully applicable now, or less than fully perfect now, I guess is the better way to phrase it. That said, I still have some concerns with respect to the parking, and as I said, I want to approve this, but I want to make sure that we do our due diligence prior to doing that. Would you be amenable to sharing those items with staff if we put this to the very next available zoning meeting? And if they're satisfied, I promise you I'm going to be a yes. And if they have a trivial concern, I'll still be a yes. But I just don't feel that I have enough information with respect to the parking situation to support it tonight, although I think if you're cooperative with them, I'd ask that they make every effort to try to meet with you timely and to receive and process that information timely, so that if you're amenable to having this put off, I'm very much inclined to support this, provided they have a little bit more information to tell me that they're comfortable, despite that 13-space deficit or deficiency.
Yes, Commissioner, I'll accept a continuance on this to the next.
And I promise I'm not trying to put you off by any means.
I understand. It's just, I think from their position, my position too, from somebody who's lived on Merritt Island for over 40 years, when we saw this project happen in Merritt Park Place, and I've been through this with the county before when I built what is now Island Animal Hospital, was the Board of Realtors building.
I take my dog there.
Yeah, and we were trying to squeeze parking because they had an assembly space upstairs when it was the Board of Realtors building. And we had to count the on-street parking in order to make that project work, that the county, then that's what it was there for, for the businesses in that Merritt Park Place to use. So I guess it's a little confusing to hear staff say they're not, and again, I know you have one size fits all, but I think I can speak on behalf of Merritt Island Residents Commissioner that it's time that there be some parking land development regulations for that 520 State Road 3 corridor, because trying to redevelop that area and make it fit to the same criteria that works out here in Vieira or other unincorporated Brevard, it doesn't work.
No,
and I think you know that.
No, my office is on State Road 3, so I'm there every day. I can tell you, I understand where you're coming from.
I know you understand that.
And I do want to work with you, and I'll tell you as well, if you have any difficulty with staff, which I doubt, I sincerely doubt you will, give me a call, and I'll set it up, and I'll meet with you and with staff and make it happen.
I'm not sure if that's, then you're back into your disclosure thing. So,
It won't be an issue. All I have to say is that I met with you with respect to it.
all right, be happy to, thank you. But yes,
I appreciate it.
we'll agree to a continuance.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And that would be the March 7th, 2019 meeting.
Will that work for you?
Yeah,
Perfect, I know I'll be here.
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you need to make a motion?
Okay, I'll move to set it to that date.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lober to table the item till March the 7th. Commission? Second by Commissioner Pritchett. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Tobias in the nay. Okay, the next item, number 5.
Okay, item number 5 is a proposal by Martin Family Trust, Joseph P. Martin and Sarah Martin, and Craig and Jennifer Martin Sater, requesting a change of zoning classification from BU1 to BU2 on a property that's 1.39 acres in size, just south of Crossroad on Highway 1.
I don't have any cards. Is the applicant here?
They attended the planning and zoning meeting.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yes, ma'am. Miss Aaron, when I talked to you about the planning and zoning's recommendations.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're looking to approve this with their recommendations tonight, ma'am?
The Planning and Zoning Board just approved it. There
Okay.
was no conditions placed on their approval.
Okay. Okay, I make a motion to approve this item.
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item H6.
Oh, goodness. Excuse me, Madam Chair, did I skip item 3?
No,
I apologize.
no, we did it.
Did
we? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it went to the next meeting, correct? Was it
Right,
3?
okay.
Yeah.
All right, item 6, a proposal by Sylvia Properties represented by Fernando Ortiz requesting a change of zoning classification from TU2 to BU2 on a property off of 192 that's 5 acres in size, and the applicant's here.
Okay, and I also want to disclose, I spoke with Mr. Farrell like right before the meeting, so that was my only disclosure I have. I haven't spoke with the applicant or anybody else. So if anybody has any other disclosures? No?
I said hello to.
Then you didn't discuss the item, so that doesn't
No,
count.
I didn't, but I'm just covering my bases.
Are you the applicant? Did you fill out a card?
I'm Fernando Ortiz from 1720 Columbia Lane. No,
Did you fill one of these out?
no ma'am, I didn't.
Okay, you can speak and just state your name and address and just fill one of these out before you're done, if that's
I will,
okay.
ma'am.
Can I add one thing as well? I don't know that this is required disclosure by any means, but I've certainly bought granite from you all, and it's been great.
Thank you.
And I'll
Okay.
probably buy some more in the future.
All right. Name and address, I'm sorry.
Fernando Ortiz, 5609 Crane Road in Melbourne Village.
Okay, you want to talk about,
Yes,
What are you trying to
I
do?
was requesting the northern part of the property to be, the 2 acres of the northern part of the property to be changed to my current BU2 zoning, but I actually only need 1 acre, so that would be...
do you want, is it,
Yes.
you guys mind if you'll indulge me for a moment? You don't, I mean, do you want to limit yourself, or do you want to have the
Yeah,
2 able to keep the canopy?
Just 1 acre would be perfect.
And no additional buildings?
No, and I'm adding a canopy to it.
The canopy, though, that's not
Yes.
a building, 'cause I think that was the only
No,
concern.
yeah, it's just a canopy, there's not a building.
Okay, great.
So just a quick question, if I may. The canopy, is the idea to have granite under the canopy?
Yes, exactly, so there's nothing else out in the weather.
So just for my edification, as I
Yes.
recall, the granite that was exposed outside is the least expensive. The stuff that's covered outside is in the middle, and the stuff inside's the most?
Exactly, but
All right.
everything, the least expensive will be covered on the new area.
Oh, okay, I can handle that. Thank you.
No problem.
Did anybody have any additional concerns? Okay, thank you. I have a comment card, public comment. Mr. Farrell, you good? Okay. All right, so I guess, Mr. Silva, obviously, we've gone through all these items. I don't have a problem with the 2 acres. Is that would that be your preference, or
No,
do you?
just 1 acre would be perfect for me, because there is a limitation of what I can do.
Okay, so
And-
you prefer just to be the
Yes,
1 acre,
just
the
1
one
acre.
front acre?
I think through our conversations since the Planning and Zoning Board and this board, the recommendation on January 7th that the Planning and Zoning Board made was, although it allowed him more area to be rezoned, it placed conditions on that area that reduced the development potential of it. So since he doesn't really need all that area, if he extracted that from the zoning request, he would be left with the full TU2 rights that he currently retains, which are actually greater than the limitations that were part of the Planning and
But
Zoning
that would be
Board's
the back
request.
portion.
The
I mean, the
front
back
port-
portion would be the one that remains.
All, the 4 acres closest to 192 would remain with the existing zoning is what he's asking for today. And then the northern acre, he is amenable to the conditions that were placed by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Okay. All right, this is in my district, so could someone make a motion for me? I don't have an issue with it.
I'll go ahead and move that it be approved.
Make a motion by Commissioner Lober with the one,
As we discussed, with the
Yeah.
one modification.
with the 1 acre. Second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Item H6? Or no, H7.
A proposal by Peggy Townsend, represented by Dale Townsend, requesting a change of zoning classification from AU to RU19 and RU19 to RU17 on a property .69 acres inside on the south side of Beavis Road, just south of Lucas.
Yes, my name is Dale Townsend. I was here last.
Does anybody have any disclosures?
No, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Dale Townsend. I believe y'all approved it last time, and I was coming here for the meeting. I don't know what else to say. I'm planning on building a house for my mother on that piece of property.
Great.
And just trying to get it rezoned, because right now it's like half AU, half another resident. I'm just trying to get it conformed, because right now it's not correct on
Okay.
any of the things.
And did you fill one of these out?
Not today, no.
Okay, so before you leave, could you fill one out, just so we'll have it for the record in case they need like correct
Where's when I
spelling and
get
that
one
sort
of
of
those?
stuff? Just in the back.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
That's
Is there
okay.
anything else that I need? I didn't.
Do you have any questions?
With respect to this, I see in the summary and explanation that there's a request to reserve the right to subdivide the lot in the future.
Yeah.
What is it that you're looking potentially to do down the road?
Right now, nothing. We're just trying to build a single-family home.
And you're looking at doing that on the front portion, or which portion of the lot?
I guess would be the front portion, yes, sir. It's the part that's 65 foot wide, and I know the back gets like 180 or something. It gets really big.
Okay, so down the road, I'm just trying to get an idea so that when we deal with this, hopefully it's resolved for you and resolved for us down the road. Is it your idea down the road to potentially have a flag lot with that little piece that juts out off to the side?
Not right now. It's just trying to build a house on it. We don't have any future plans or anything. My mother's 70 years old, so I don't know what will
Okay.
happen, later on. But right now, we're just trying to build, 800, 900 square foot house.
Okay, does staff have any concerns with respect to it?
Not necessarily. It could be subdivided, and he could provide that detail at this level, but even if it were to be subdivided, the lot size seems fairly consistent with the surrounding lot sizes, so.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird shape. It's kind of weird.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to get a better idea, but we've certainly not received any communications from anyone on this, so no complaints from the neighbors or issues with it. So I'd move to approve it.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lober to approve.
Second.
Second by,
Hang on, I'm seeing an arm out in the,
oh,
are your neighbors? Okay.
okay. Do they want to speak, or
Do y'all want to speak, or?
they didn't fill anything out?
Is it your intent just to do over one house?
Ma'am, we need you to come up and speak in the record, and then we'll need you to fill out a comment card afterwards as well.
And I understand, as it stands right now, they could subdivide it now and have a flag lot, and if they chose to, I mean, they could do that, be given the size, correct?
The AU portion of the lot is undevelopable because it's undersized. So
Right.
the RU19 portion of the lot could be split off from the AU portion, but it still wouldn't result in 2 dwelling units with the zoning it has today.
It would be like a
So it could be
guest house or
subdivided,
something.
but
Yeah,
not developable if so.
correct. So they're just looking at putting one house in the front?
Hi, my name is Jean James, and I've lived there with my mom for about, well, a long time. And we're the neighbors here today. Our concern is just that we also heard that there's a possibility of like condos or something being built there? Okay, so it's just one home for your mom?
We only own the little part of the one around it.
The 0.69?
Yeah, the .69. We don't own that 9 or 7
The
acres.
The 8 acres? Okay, okay. That was
I
our
can show you
concern.
the map if you'd like.
Yeah, I just live right there by it.
Okay, because this is the
Around
property
from
that
it.
he's speaking about right here. And this is in the agenda packet already. It's where it says AU and then the one right immediately below it as well.
Yeah, and I can show where we're trying to attempt to put a house. Yeah.
And just to clarify, the zoning classification that they're seeking doesn't allow for condo development.
Does not.
We need to go on the mic if you guys are going to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're
Thank
going to
you.
have conversation.
No, we did not. We don't own
No,
it.
no, I'm saying if you're going to talk now.
Thank you. Well, you still, if you want to talk, you've still got the remaining time.
Yeah, that was my only concern, was if they purchase the other remaining acres, which is quite a bit, that goes all the way to the back.
Yeah, that's not right.
Well, as I understand it from staff, regardless, he's not going to be able to put condos up, so if that's the concern, it seems to be
I'm glad I'm not.
Kinda mood.
I don't want condos there either.
Yeah, we don't, yeah.
all the better.
Yeah.
I was just putting a house.
We were pretty sure about the house, but then we're hearing the rumors, so we just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't own it. There's like our portion is 65 foot, and then there's
Yeah.
another 50 foot.
Right.
And then it goes all the way to the back, and then it expands out
Yes.
to that 7 or 9 acres.
Yes.
No, we don't own that. I heard some Chinese people own that.
Europe,
And then
they're from Europe.
Chad Ross owns the other part that has the gate.
Yes.
And he was the previous where we bought that piece of property. I think his grandmother and grandfather owned all
Yes,
that
the
property at
Jenkins.
one time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
one time.
Are you all happy?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Okay, so I had the motion, I think it was seconded.
Did we get that?
If not,
Did you
I'll
get the
move,
motion
I'll
and the
move
second?
again.
Okay.
All right.
And
Anything
ladies,
else?
if you could fill out a comment card on your way out, if you don't mind, just so we can have it in the record, okay?
Yeah.
Thank
And I
you.
need to fill that one too as well.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you need from me, sir?
I think
No.
we're good, right?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item H8. Any disclosures?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope. Okay.
It's a proposal by CP Venture 5 AMC LLC, represented by Mr. Puskar, requesting a CUP for alcoholic beverages, beer and wine only, for on-premises consumption in conjunction with an indoor family entertainment center in a PUD zoning classification. And this property is just right over here in the Avenues Viera.
Hi, this is Van Puskar, 1185 Talon Way, Melbourne, Florida, 32934. So we have taken the old Sports Authority space in the avenues to create an indoor entertainment park for families and kids.
Great.
Sir, I would like to ask you, I don't really have a problem with this, I just have a question.
Sure.
So your indoor family entertainment center, what is the entertainment?
Yes, it's going to be a lot of trampolines, virtual reality games, laser tag, bowling, and sky rider, like an indoor zip line. Yeah.
Well, I hope you have some hefty insurance.
Yes, paying $14,000 a month. Yes,
Sounds
we do.
fun.
Yes. It's a national franchise. It's called Urban Air, and it's a pretty fast-growing entertainment segment in the whole of U.S. So we would love to get it to our county.
Is the laser tag limited to children, or are big kids allowed as well?
Even for big
Okay,
kids.
good.
And yes, you all can come for event.
Great.
Yes.
They'll lose, though.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this request.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Good luck.
Thank you.
March 15th?
March
15th.
Say it again in the microphone.
March 15th? Yes.
Thank you.
Please visit us, okay? Thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 9 is a proposal by Market Street Vieira Senior Real Estate LLC, represented by William Watson Jr., requesting a change of zoning classification from INL to BU1A on a property that's on the east side of Murrell Road at Crane Creek Boulevard, and it's 3.66 acres in size.
Any disclosures?
I'm good.
We have the applicant, Mr. Noor.
Thank you. My name is Philip Noor. My business address is at 1795 West Nassau Boulevard in Melbourne. I apologize, I've just developed a coughing, so as I speak, I may be coughing at the same time. So we're here to answer any questions. What's going to occur if we get the zoning change is we're going to be putting up a office building that's going to house a real estate facility, and it would be a full-use type of facility. It would have not only the real estate component, but it would also deal with financing for any real estate transactions. So it would give a customer a one-stop shopping place. So I have the some of the principles from the company here if we need to address any questions. But we do have a recommendation of approval from your Planning and Zoning Board. Pleased to answer any questions that the audience may have or that you may have.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this item.
Okay.
You
I have a
cards?
motion by Commissioner Smith.
I'll second for discussion.
Second for discussion by Commissioner Pritchett. Commissioner Lober?
I'm just curious if staff has any concerns with respect to this agenda item.
I don't think we do. You know, this was planned as the second phase of the assisted living facility that's just to the north, so it's nice to see something since the recession come forward at this parcel.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, I have some comment cards as well. Marianne Ferrara? I just realized that 2 of these weren't applicant cards.
My name is Marianne Ferrara. I live at 6840 Raccoon Court, right off of Crane Creek in the Forden Ridge development, which is 500 yards from the corner of Crane Creek and Morrell. If anyone takes a ride along Morrell, there is north of Spyglass to Vieira Boulevard residential properties. There are no other businesses. And my concern is when they developed Market Square, they took that whole area which was a sanctuary. And now we're putting in more business on that corner. This was a residential area. And now it's just being, you know, that's going to be the only piece of property from Spyglass north to Vieira Boulevard, which has right there on Vieira Boulevard, the corner there is still undeveloped, and that is more conducive to a commercial and industrial area. And a business already went out on that corner. I'm just concerned that there'll be more traffic already on Morrell than we need. And what is it going to do to my corner? So that's my concern. And I would, you know, when I bought the property, it was zoned by the Vieira company. And, you know, we have a park and we have a lovely residential development there. I don't want to see it get turned into commercial.
I believe the original zoning was assisted living, right?
It was originally, I believe, for the church, and the church ran into some, St. John's ran into some parking situation because of the wetland that was behind where they were going to put the parking. And then the Market Square bought the whole piece, knocked everything down that was there, including the sanctuary, and it's been vacated for some time. But I'm just concerned that, there's going to be more traffic, and where how it's going to be developed, and what roads are going to get the egress and in and out of there. And my corner ends that property where I live, and I just don't want to see any more of it get commercialized. So
Commissioner Lober?
that's my concern.
I appreciate you coming out. Just a question, Mr. Calkins, if you know, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot here. Are we looking at a situation in which that road is near capacity now, or is it nowhere near capacity? Because I share her concern, or at least I respect her concern, I should say, with respect to not wanting to see that road swamp, but I just don't know if it's near capacity or not.
Yeah, I have the staff report in front of me. So we looked at that pretty intensely to ensure that there weren't any transportation concurrency issues. This property it was platted in 2015, cleared and graded already for this assisted living facility. So we evaluated the current zoning, the institutional low, and the trips that could be generated from that use and compared that to what they're proposing to change the zoning to today, and found that that would be a reduction in trip generation. So
What they're proposing?
What they're proposing over the current zoning. So we anticipate the impact to be less than what could have gone in there under the current zoning. We also looked at access management very carefully. So this property has platted shared access to the exit onto Murrell through the assisted living facility to the north. I think the applicants can confirm that. So they won't be proposing another driveway cut onto Murrell. And then they bought extra property, and as a part of the previous plat, and I'm not sure how they'll come forward with the new proposal for development, had 2 access points onto Crane Creek approved. Our transportation section put comments in the staff report that said that those access points will be re-reviewed with a new site plan when it comes forward. But the capacity of the roadway right now it's at 43% of the capacity.
We're nowhere near,
So,
essentially.
staff does not have concerns with the trip generation.
Thank you.
My comment would be that there would be 2 more egress on Crane Creek, and that's right across from the church, and there is no, that's the concern. As we move on with this, that it's going to be an expandable thing, and there is going to be traffic on the residential road that leads in and out of the development.
We have one more.
Yes, I have Mr. William Little.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. William Little, Jacksonville, Florida. I filled out the card only in the event that Attorney Noor asked me
Oh,
for
okay.
questions.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
Commissioner Lober?
As I said earlier, I like to defer to the commissioners where these projects are taking place or where the rezoning is being requested. Do you have any concerns?
No, I already made the motion.
Okay, well, with everything that you've heard since then,
Haven't heard
you still
anything
happy?
change.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Item H10. Any disclosures?
I have one here. I see on January 31st, either I or my staff met with, it looks like my staff met with Bill Henk, H-E-I-N-K, who had some concerns with respect to this request.
This item is a proposal by Clark A. and Patricia A. Sims requesting a change of zoning classification from RU19 to RU24 on a property that's .93 acres in size, located on the west side of North Tropical Trail, just south of Lucas Road.
Great. We can have 1 or 2 Sims, if you like. Okay.
We both filled out a card.
As I say, you both filled out cards, and if you're both going to
think she
speak, but you get
say the same
15,
thing.
you get 15 minutes, and then if there's questions, then you have a chance to rebut. So if you don't like what somebody says, or somebody speaks out against for whatever reason, then you can come back up and address, or not, whatever. So could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Patty Sims, 700 St. Lawrence Lane, Merritt Island, Florida.
My husband, Clark Sims.
700 St. Lawrence Lane,
Great.
Merritt Island.
We are just asking to have the front portion of our property that is along North Tropical Trail rezoned to RU24. It actually meets with the future land use, which is Res 4 all up and down the street. Across the street, it's Res 6. Across the street a little bit, like to the south is Res 15. Our reasoning for the 2-4 is simply because our lot is very thin. So there are some concerns with a road. Our intention is to build my mother, who is 84, a place to live, Clark's parents, who are 10 years behind her, a place to live, and my aging sister, who's got some medical issues anyway. We don't want to split up our property. We don't want a bunch of driveways. We just want to be able to put houses to take care of our family. I know our neighbors have raised some concern about the multifamily part of this. We don't want apartments. We have a lovely home on the river. I don't want to drive by apartments to go down my driveway. We just want the homes there. Like I said, it's consistent with the future land use, and it's the only way that we can do it and all use the same driveway. Does that make sense? Sorry, that's why we're here.
Yeah, the existing RU19 is just not consistent with the Res 4 future land use designation. We had to update it to something to do anything. And after working with Mr. Ritchie in planning and zoning for several days, I'm sure
God bless him.
to figure it out, this is what he came up with.
Great. All right. Do you want to hear the other questions, the other speakers, or you want to ask questions?
Your preference.
Okay. We had a few questions for you, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
I heard him say he had questions.
I
What's up?
appreciate that. And I've got some for staff and potentially
Okay,
some for
so-
you as well. But just first, I'll tell you what my concerns are, and I'll just try to keep it as succinct as possible. With multifamily, I understand that you all don't intend to expand this and make this something chaotic, but my problem is if we allow for that, if you all transfer the property, it may become an issue down the road where someone else doesn't have the same intentions that you all do. My understanding from having spoken with staff, and I looked into this some beforehand, and help me out here, with respect to the house that's on there, is it about 3,300 square feet now?
2,700 square feet.
2,700 square feet?
I believe, yeah.
Okay, in that range?
And the whole property is 2.92 acres.
Okay.
So it's
It
kind of
makes
a
sense.
strange setup if you see it,
Okay.
that front
Yeah, and
slice.
I don't have any problem with y'all putting another house up,
Yeah.
or another structure, that's not a problem in my mind. But my understanding, and help me out here if you would, Aaron, if they wanted to put a guest house on that structure as it's currently zoned, they could do so, but it would be limited to half the square footage of the existing house, so half of the 2,700?
Yeah, that is correct. There's also some additional limitations on prohibiting rental, separate utilities to the structure, garage additions to a guest house. So there are provisions in the zoning classification that they have today that would allow them to build one extra structure if it were perceived as a guest house without doing the zoning action. So I guess the question from staff was, at the Planning and Zoning Board, the request was whittled down from 3 additional houses to 1, and we wondered if you agreed to that condition at that board, whether or not we were pretty close to being able to do it under the existing zoning. So I guess staff is wondering how, are you still requesting the 3 houses at this board today? And
Well, so what we understood with the existing zoning was that if we could build another structure, but it couldn't have a kitchen in it. And what we're trying to do, obviously, our parents are very independent, provide them a place to live where they can be independent, but they're still close enough where we're, able to take care of them.
My understanding, and I may be wrong, but help me out if I am, is they could have a kitchen in that guest house. Is that correct?
yes, they can.
We can only have one.
One-
I don't want our parents to have to bunk together. I mean,
One
Right.
kitchen or one
The
house,
question
or-
from staff arose at the Planning and Zoning Board when your husband agreed to a condition to the only one additional structure being allowed, and that is where
Yeah, well,
we
they
wondered.
actually asked if I would be willing to sign a BDA for single-family housing. So I would definitely be willing to sign an agreement, BDA for single-family housing, which I think would help protect the concern of multifamily houses not being able to be built there. Again, with the width of the
Am I-
property.
So the
You
motion.
couldn't put
The
additional
motion from
driveways in.
the Planning and Zoning Board was that the binding development plan be limited to one single-family unit. So that's where we wondered if you were reducing the crust to just one unit, whether or not the guest house would meet your needs.
Well, I'm confused on the guest house, I guess. Is that on the, is EU property behind that? I'm a little confused.
on the property.
Yeah, if you see that in the notes.
Well, let me ask you,
I'm
what,
just- I don't,
just
just
so I get a
talk
better-
of the guest house, so I'm kind of confused.
I'm just trying to understand or visualize what it is that you're actually intending to do if you were to get the zoning changed.
I have a picture here.
This long thin piece is our property.
Right.
This is the piece we're talking about.
Okay.
Now, you can see these people all have the same issues down here and have subdivided.
Right.
Right? What we are trying to do is, because it's so long and thin, there's not enough
Right.
to build a road or a county acceptable road to cap driveways.
Right, there's a canal, I think, somewhere
The
in there too,
canal
is
is
there
on
not?
this line to the south of the property.
Okay.
And these are the homes on the other side. So having 3 homes here, we could only put 3 because we don't have a full acre and it's Res 4. So
Right.
that would be 3. Obviously, it's very consistent with everything around it. There's single-family homes across here. There's a street full here. There's a subdivision. I mean, you can see it. And you can see what it's zoned all around
So are
it.
you looking at actually putting up 3? Because I think
We don't want
they
to,
were
I don't
concerned,
want,
and I was concerned in terms of the actual number of what you're looking to
3
put
is
up.
the maximum amount.
Yeah,
That's
I
why we
just-
asked for the 2 to 4.
I just kind of put a little thing to give you an idea. This is North Tropical Trail, I believe. This is back where my property is. You can see our driveway. There's not enough width there to have separate driveways, so it couldn't be developed.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So let me just try to get it reined back in a little bit.
We would like to put 3 houses up. It's consistent with the future land use.
Let me ask you, just because this
Is
is,
that the item that's on the agenda? That's a bigger question.
I think it is the item on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah. In terms of what you all are doing, and you may already have a pretty good leg up with respect to that, would you be willing, if this is something that we're inclined to potentially support, to table this, provide a concept plan, that, and if you have any additions to staff, so that they can look at it, advise me as to whether it looks consistent or not, so that we're not doing this kind of at a short notice sort of a situation? Because I've looked at everything that was submitted, but in terms of that, it's all new information for me in terms of what your actual specific proposal is, your intended use, I should say.
You just want to see the 3 houses
Just a
there
concept
and
plan in
like,
terms of what you're looking at doing, and if you know
Sure, I
a
kinda
rough
got
square
it
footage
here.
or rough square
sure.
footage, just something to give me a better idea, because I'd heard it was 3 originally, and then it may have been 1, and it's been kind of less than clear for me.
I think part of the confusion is you're willing to agree to 1 additional structure if you had to get it approved. Is that?
If I had to, yeah.
I wasn't there.
I've never been
Yeah.
to one of these, so
Well, your
my
wife wasn't
first
there,
time
so I
here,
wouldn't agree to that
wasn't
without
there.
her.
I was
Happy
a
life is happy
little
life.
space shot, you know.
Right.
She's the brains of the operation, but I couldn't be here. So.
And I'm sure in a perfect world, I'll just mention, I'm sure in a perfect world, they would have you'd have that property all subdivided, you'd have 3 separate driveways, 3 separate, because your goal is just to get everybody to live
Yeah, we're
close
not
to each
even
other.
interested in subdividing.
We like our property.
Right.
And we think it'll actually protect it in case, if we ever would sell, which I can't imagine we would, I think it would protect the neighborhood from worrying about it being subdivided and now having who knows what happening.
One of the concerns and one of the things that I was trying to work through in terms of getting an option or an alternative from staff was potentially having you all, if you'd agree, put a restriction on there. It could only be family members, but then the problem was discussed, it's next to impossible
Yeah.
to enforce. So if you did that, even if you were willing, it really wouldn't do anything for us because we have no ability essentially to verify that. So
Great,
Can we
great.
put a limitation on it that said it must be single family, it can't be multi? I mean, can we do, like, in other words, it's not going to be a duplex or a triplex, it's just individual homes?
You mean 2 additional single-family?
3 additional
Correct.
single-family
No,
homes?
3 total.
3 total,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah, I was going to say it's 3 total.
Yeah,
Right.
instead of them, I do believe that's part of the concern, that it would become,
Right.
if you all are willing to do that, again, I'd still
Yeah, I
regardless
mean-
ask for a concept plan, but if you can put that in the plan or at least in the docs that you
of course, the only
submit to
reason
them.
we had to go to the multi is simply the size of the lot.
Yeah, just the width of the lot.
And we don't
I just want to make sure we don't have to put them through like another several months of this process of sending them back to P&Z if it's pretty close to what they're asking for.
No, I'm not, I don't want to, I'm not asking to go to P and Z if that's what,
No, I
if that's
know,
what's being
but
perceived
if we
as.
change it too much, they're going to have to. That's, if we, correct?
It's up to the discretion of this board whether or not
Okay.
you believe it needs to go
And we
back to
probably
P&Z.
should hear from the two other common cars. That's why
Yes,
I wanted
ma'am.
to hear from them after, because.
Thanks.
Okay.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, I
Sorry.
think there was a little confusion because the planning and zoning came back and said that you agreed to one single-family units. That's where I've even done my studying off of, because with the change of the zoning, I asked staff, well, why are they even changing zoning? Because they can already build one. And she said she thought it was primarily because of the driveway situation, of trying to share driveways. So I agree with Commissioner Lober, because I think this is going to have to wrap our head around this now. I got a whole bunch more questions now if we're going to add 3 houses on, because there's drainage and all those things. Sure. And we're changing it to a higher density zoning. So, my heart has always caused no harm. So I agree with Commissioner Lober. I think we're going to have to do his suggestion here and let it come back with some more information. Correct, sir?
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
So I do have a question, just because I don't know the answer. When they do a future land use, do they not take these things into consideration? I mean, if they
Yes, and
intended...
sometimes they get it right and sometimes they get it wrong.
Okay, gotcha.
Because, everybody's human and you can't predict what's going to happen to a particular area, especially if something else
No, I was
moves
thinking
in.
about the
or-
drainage and such, and I'm thinking, wouldn't that be part of what they had already considered?
Right, and you're...
But, I mean, I understand it. Doesn't mean no disrespect. I'm just curious. I don't understand
But I think
how
that's what
they
they
do it.
originally asked for.
It was like Commissioner Lober said, although you guys are wonderful, honest, and wonderful, but what if you sold it with the conditions? We have to put up certain...
Sure, we don't mind. Like I
I
said,
know.
we're
going to get it
trying
all worked
there.
out, but, yeah.
So that everybody's happy.
Okay, Lena Walters and John Mason, if you want to come up and speak.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
We're not there yet. We're still open. Hi.
Hi, my name is Leanna Walters at 530 Timuquana Drive.
John Mason, same address.
So we live on the other side of the canal. We're house number 2 on the map. So we just recently invested in this property, so we're new neighbors, and now we're facing the potential of low-density multifamily in our backyard. So of course that does concern us for a lot of reasons. Had it honestly been zoned that way prior to us purchasing the home, we wouldn't have. We have some concerns for that. One is the market value of our home. What's that going to do to our home? The burden on the subject property itself. I know, they're in a situation where many of us are facing. We have elderly parents, loved ones, etc. This is one option for them, but it really does impact a whole neighborhood and a community for them to build. So. One house, we can kind of understand that. The property may be able to support that. I know they're going to have challenges with the width of the property, the driveway, et cetera. So even to put one is going to maybe be a challenge. But the thought of 3 houses right there, future rentals, a lot of the concerns that we've heard tonight with your questioning are a lot of what we have as well. So we definitely appreciate and respect that you've brought that forward.
Yeah, just like, say, for example, they ever decide to move on. So who's going to buy that I mean, you never know what the future is going to bring. Who's going to buy that property and how are those houses going to be maintained? You've got one house, and maybe somebody thinks it's a great idea, but then they can't maintain it. I mean, they've got good intentions with their parents and all that sort of thing, but for whatever reason, we plan on being there for a long time. What if somebody else comes in and they've got this zoning in place and they don't maintain those houses, and then all of a sudden you've got zombie houses sitting there across the canal, whereas when we bought this, we were under the understanding that that wasn't even going to be an issue. So we didn't know about this little back half of their property that was deemed different. And then you also have to think about septic and the canal and Indian River and all these different things that are going to come into play. Of course we'd want these people to take care of their parents, but for whatever reason, if things change, we're stuck with a possible zombie house.
Yeah, or short-term rentals, daily
Airbnbs,
rentals. I don't know if
yeah.
Airbnb's allowed, whatever. But I mean, that's a reality to us across our canal, our shared property and our shared land. So
Yeah.
that's basically all.
Sure.
Are you guys on septic or sewer?
Septic.
Septic.
That whole area is septic.
Thank you.
From our
There's,
understanding.
yeah, there's no way that, there's no sewer out there at all.
Yeah.
So that would all be individual septic tanks, 3 of them on the canal. And with their, you know, they've got, with their setbacks and everything else, they don't have a whole lot of room. But like I said, we don't, you know, of course we want them to take care of their parents and everything else. But, you know, heaven forbid somebody else comes along and we've got somebody who doesn't care about the property and the canal and that sort of thing.
Correct.
So that's
All
our
right.
concern.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Can I get a motion?
Yes.
I just want to point out that where they live now, they're surrounded by houses. So their concern or that somebody's going to rent, they could rent right next door, which is a lot closer than
they are.
across the canal. Actually, I think it is a rental right next
Yeah,
door.
2
There's
of them,
at least 2 houses on that street that are rentals right now.
Which back up to our
So,
property.
you know, I mean, they have a house here and here and here and
It may
here
be
and
moot
here
at this
and
point. Let me just ask,
Yeah.
if you all are amenable, I'll move to table it. If you would, get them a concept plan, the more detail, the better. You don't need to get anyone, if you want to hire someone, God bless, you're welcome to do that, but you don't have to.
Yeah, good.
If they have questions, the sooner that you can get that process rolling with them, the better, because if it's something where we're learning of it the day of when this is being considered, it's just a lot more difficult.
Sure, sure.
I promise I'll give you every consideration,
I'll give it
but please just do what you can to work with them. If it's okay, I'll table it, or I'll move to table it, and hopefully that's the way we'll go.
So we'll just come back in a
Absolutely.
month.
What would the date be?
What's the next date?
So is that all right for you all, March 7th?
Absolutely. Sure,
of course.
Okay, I'd move the table it to March 7th in that case.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lober.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Who do we give the site plan to?
If you can get with
You
with
all
Aaron-
can continue to work with George Ritchie or myself on that in the next few weeks.
And again, if you have any trouble, I'll extend the same offer that I extended to the prior applicant in my district. Give me a call if you have trouble. I don't think you will, but if you do, I'll be an intermediary and make sure I'm there as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks. And items 11 and 12 were withdrawn. So we have item 13.
Item 13 is a proposal by Gregory D. Taylor and Rachel J. Fitzpatrick requesting an expansion of an existing CUP for alcoholic beverages, beer and wine only for on-premises consumption in conjunction with a bar in BU1 zoning classification. And they're also seeking to amend the previously approved conditions of the existing CUP. This property is .31 acres in size, located on the northeast corner of McLeod and Murtis.
My name is Greg Taylor, 111 South Atlantic Avenue, Cocoa Beach, Florida, and my wife's in Bali right now, and I'm okay if I try to get her on the phone so she can listen?
Sure. I mean, you got 15 minutes, so you can stand up there and call anybody you want.
Okay, give it a shot here.
Are there any comments on this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
This one.
And before, actually, I should mention, with respect to a disclosure, I do have a disclosure on this one.
The one time I don't ask is you guys
Yeah.
don't have the lights on.
Thanks. It looks like February 7th, so earlier today, when I was at a meeting in Vieira at my office, received an envelope from Ed and Carolyn, how would you pronounce that? Wegriff? Wegriff. With concerns about this particular request. And then it looks like I also, while I was out in Vieira on a meeting, it looks like Mr. Taylor did in fact reach out to the office earlier today to speak about this, but I wasn't in, so I don't know that there was any conversation had.
No, there wasn't. Well, thank you. Rachel is on the phone here. 14 months ago, you approved and we opened the Bali Bar, which is a wine, beer bar, plus a retail store where we sell things from around the world, primarily from Indonesia. It's been well received. It's upscale. It's beautiful. It's appreciated by our neighbors, and it's been a good business for us. We're looking to expand our CUP to the next lot, and some want our customers, why we've thought about doing this is, like last night we had a book club, we had 18 people there. It gets very crowded in a small wine beer bar when you have a group like that, and then try to have any other members come in and enjoy the club. We have bridal showers, birthday parties, pampered chef parties, yoga. Island Animal Hospital next door came over and had an impromptu business meeting there, and all of a sudden we have 15 or 20 people from next door. And so we thought it would be nice to have another place right next to it, surrounded by the same landscaping, where when we had larger groups, we could still serve the wine and the beer, and they could have some privacy. So that's the idea behind it. The action we've taken is we've bought the adjoining small lot. We removed a 50-year-old trailer that was pretty unsightly and had issues with the police. We started landscaping so that it would match the Valley Bar, which has been appreciated. We've, in the last 2 days, had 2 containers delivered from Valley that have a 20 by 30 foot open air pavilion. It's a pavilion that has basically 8 poles, bamboo that can go down the side, a grass roof on the top, consistent with the small gazebo we have in front of the Valley Bar today, just larger. So it's 20 by 30 feet. It passed the Planning and Zoning Board, it passed the MIRA Board, and the only issue was the same issue that was brought up before regarding Merritt Parkway and parking. So last night about 9 o'clock I walked down the street and I counted 51 parking spots on the street, 55 in the Island Animal Hospital across the street, 10 on the business just south of us where our patrons are allowed to park. There's a parking lot that a discount pharmacy uses, and I have a picture of that, but there were 20 cars in that parking lot today. We have 10 in our Valley Bar, so that's 146 empty parking spots last night. In the 1 year, 14 months we've been open, we've never had one complaint regarding parking. Our neighbors frequently come into the bar. They've never complained. And I think when we talk about bar parking, I think the point that was brought up about ride sharing is very relevant. I think another probably just as relevant or more is people come to Valley Bar, they ride bikes, they walk because it's a neighborhood, and more important than that, a lot of people come by Uber now. So for example, last Saturday, the last 8 people that were in the bar, there wasn't a car in the parking lot. They all came by Uber, because if you're going to go out and have drinks at a bar and you're going to drink 2 or more drinks, you're probably going to take Uber rather than drive. So whatever kind of parking, thinking about parking for bars, I think it's a little antiquated in what's available now. So this is a non-conforming area. We're trying to make the area better, add to a very successful new business in an area that we're kind of the pioneer. And we're happy to see the other restaurant bar potentially come in there. We'll continue to operate regardless, but I did want to point out, you asked the question, how much does one of those studies cost? So we went to an engineer study who has done a lot of these studies, and he told us to do the study for the site plan, including the parking, etc., would be $35,000 to $50,000. We can't afford to do that. We just bought that property. We just bought the everything else. So that's the estimate that was given to us. So if we're asked to do that, then we won't go forward with this. So we thank you for your consideration.
Can we go through the other cards first, and then we may call you back up possibly.
Okay.
All right, I have Carolyn Wigeriff. Carolyn?
Thank you. I'm Carolyn Wiegriff, and my husband and I live at 3000 South Tropical Trail, Merritt Island, Florida. And we've been residents of Merritt Island since 1961, so we've seen a lot of changes. And our main concern is the expansion from 30 to 72 seats, and also number 2 on their application or for their request is a signage prohibiting parking on our parking area, and they want this removed. That was the language in the application. And we've owned the strip stores that are adjacent to the east of this property since 1976, and the building is occupied by 5 small businesses, and the building the building there's parking in the rear for the business owners and their workers, and then in the front is where the customers are parked. And parking was discussed at the zoning meeting in 2016, 2 years ago, and little changes have been made, and established surrounding businesses should be considered and not adversely impacted. And as you know, there are liabilities issues that need to be considered when you have other people allowing other people to park on your property. And all of our objection is the Valley Bar not having adequate parking. And since our business is right next to it, adjacent to it, we believe any additional parking requirements by their business will result in their customers using any available parking, including ours. And the bar owners do not have permission or their customers to park on our parking area. Thank you.
Commissioner Lober?
I have a question for you. In terms of the current situation, and it looks like they're looking, as was said, to expand from 30 to 72 seats, which is over doubling it. With the 30 seats as it is now, and I'm not asking the question knowing the answer, I really do wonder, are you having issues at this point with any of his customers parking on your property?
I went by about 3 weeks ago after our granddaughter played basketball and went by, and all of our customers or businesses were closed, and there were 3 cars in there. Whether they came from there, I don't know where they would have come from. And one of the tenants said that there were a couple cars parked there. So that's all I know.
What kind of business do you have?
It's a little strip store. There's A Arrow Insurance, AAA Business, a tailor, a nail shop, and a beauty shop.
And that's your strip mall?
Yes.
Okay. And you just don't want any parking in there in the evening?
That's right. It's not a shared, we don't want
Right.
anyone else parking there.
Okay. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yes, ma'am. What hours are those businesses open that you own, ma'am?
That we own?
Are they daytime businesses, like till
Yes.
5? And
the beauty parlor and sometimes the nail shop, they're open later, especially the beauty parlor, today's headlines.
And the parking that you're talking about, that he was asking to remove the sign, is that street parking, or is this just primarily their parking?
The county, did you have any other information about the signage issue?
Well, you know, in 2016, I believe the intention of this condition was to obligate the property owner, the adjacent property owner making the request, to post a sign on their property saying don't park on her property. I think Ms. Wiegriff has the impression that the county was supposed to post the sign. So I think the binding development plan is a tool to bind the applicant to that. I don't know if our traffic operations
And
department
I think
has...
some of the question was that they thought the applicant was requesting that the sign be removed, but the applicant wasn't in fact requesting that?
There was, yes. So the applicant is not, no longer, that we were confused with the documentation that we received. They're not requesting that that condition be removed, but I think Ms. Rieger is trying to make the point that that condition was never complied with because the sign was never posted. So I think she's suggesting that that signage needs to be posted and that condition needs to be retained. Is that
Now, we do
correct?
have two signs on our building at the south end of the building, on our building, that says that no parking is allowed after hours, that it's a tow-away zone.
Sharon, real quick, I might be getting this a little confused with the last one, but in this area, is there street parking here also? Because I see Grove Street.
All 10 of the parking spaces that this property, the current southern lot, enjoys are within the county right-of-way.
So it is street parking that we're talking about?
All of the parking.
All of
There
the
is
parking.
0 parking on their lot.
Okay.
They have, on the new lot, it was a residence, so it was, of course, constructed with a minimum of 2 parking spaces.
Okay.
But it also does not have parking for their business. It could.
Okay.
It could be improved to have that parking, but it currently does not. So the private parking, there is 0 private parking spaces. There are 10 parking spaces that are within the right-of-way.
So almost what's hard to determine as we're discussing these situations, because you have all this street parking and shared parking, we almost need a traffic study in the area to figure out how much business can be held as they're adding and expanding businesses, which we don't have, do we?
Well, I can clarify how we account for on-street parking today.
Okay.
And John can confirm the county's interpretation of this over time. Our code allows us to count the parking on the property, unless there's a parking agreement, and then we can account for that. The parking spaces that are in the right-of-way abutting your property, literally touching it, we have interpreted the code to count for your requirements.
Okay.
The parking spaces in front of somebody else's property, we do not count those for your requirement. So that's where the disconnect in the code and reality lies.
Okay.
And so the Planning and Zoning Board struggled with this. We realized that this area has on-street parking that is unusual. It's quite an asset, but we don't have code that supports quantifying it in a different way than elsewhere in the county. So the Planning and Zoning Board made a recommendation that we're going to bring forward to the Commission that Myra fund a study, a parking study in the Merritt Park Place area. On January 31st, just last Thursday, Myra heard that recommendation, and we'll be bringing forth a memo from them to you all indicating that they have the authority under their Community Redevelopment Agency to do that study. And then they will eventually be shifting some funds around to fund a study like that. And that study will probably evaluate code changes to account for how we can deal with this. But until that point in time, we don't have that mechanism.
Okay, well, I'm interested in hearing what Mr. Lober's going to be creative with on this. 'cause
I have
I'm sorry.
a little expansion
I'm
I want
sorry,
to
hold
add
on just
to
a minute.
respond to her.
No, sir, not unless she tells you you can. But anyways, I'm kind of curious to see what you're going to come up with as we move in this, because
Right.
that's difficult for you to double that with parking.
Could I have a little liberty on this
Sure.
one? Okay, first, I just have a couple questions. If Mr. Denninghoff wants to address, or whomever over there that feels best qualified or most inclined to address, please feel free to jump in. In terms of the level of concern that you have with respect to this particular item, obviously this is within easy walking distance of item number 4 that we addressed earlier and tabled for a similar concern. Is the situation with respect to this business more or less severe in terms of how it strikes you all from the level of where we were looking at 4 to where this is? Is this a more dire situation, a less dire situation, or is this something that's comparable?
Sorry, there we go.
If you look at it from the expansion standpoint, the other expansion they were looking at by our analysis necessitated 13 parking spaces. This expansion, we calculate, will necessitate 28 parking spaces.
And it's within striking distance of the
Very
other
close.
property?
Yeah, I believe it's within a block or maybe a block separation, one street.
And let me ask, Aaron, you had mentioned as well, and I just want to be clear on this, you said that they could add parking to this additional parcel that they have, should they so desire?
Many of the properties have solved their, in the area, have bought one lot, put a commercial building on it, and bought a second lot and put a parking lot on it, including the property across the street. So they've consolidated parking or parcels to solve their parking concern. And there seems to be space available for that to be proposed, but it just has not been. So additionally, the structure that they want to put on the property will necessitate a site plan, parking or not. So that has to come through that process, and in that process, we'll be looking at parking, but additionally, stormwater and the structure. So you have to go through that process with the county no matter what.
And I'm going to direct this one to Mr. Denningoff unless someone really feels inclined to jump in and save him on this one. I have no idea as I said, what a parking study costs, and having one engineer quote a fee, that may be low, it may be high, it may be, I don't know if that's price gouging or not. Is $35,000 to $50,000, does that as an engineer strike you as something that's reasonable given the scope of what we've talked about, or do you not?
That included a site plan.
Including a site plan?
I haven't been involved with doing a parking study in some time, but I will tell you that my impression is that seems to be a pretty high fee for that service. I could also speak to the history of some of this on-street parking.
Please.
I helped design it, and I helped get it constructed and permitted and all the rest of that. There was a serious parking problem in the Merritt Park Place area, and this was an effort on the part of Myra and the Board of County Commissioners to, at county taxpayer expense, rebuild the neighborhood in effect. And I think just about every street in the neighborhood was reconstructed, and on-street parking was provided, which was something that was very unusual at that time. Well, it's still unusual. In many cases, property owners granted easements for the construction of sidewalks and portions of parking spaces that would encroach onto their property, without which we wouldn't have been able to build the on-street parking, or we'd have to build far less, parallel parking as opposed to angled parking. And so a great many of the property owners benefited directly from that. All of them benefited from the improvement to the neighborhood, of course. But there was never a comprehensive look that I'm aware of. There was never a comprehensive look at how parking would work for the entire area if it was to be redeveloped with a more intense parking use need. So what we've seen over the years is that the lots have gradually intensified in use. And what staff has done, and I think the Commission and Myra has done in the past, is tried to moderate the requirement for the full on-lot parking. If you had adjacent to your property some of the on-street parking, you were allowed to count that as a practical matter. And so that helped them have lower expenses. What we're seeing here is intensification of use without the improvement or the addition of new parking that would be needed for the intensification of the use. So it's going to intensify the shortage of parking.
In terms of their ability to construct additional spots on that property that we're speaking about, do you have a rough idea in terms of how many spots they could add in there within reason without really putting them in a bad situation? Could they fit a couple spots, 6 spots?
I haven't personally looked at that, but I think they could get a lot more than a couple of spots. This could get you could get a significant number of spots in there. The question is could you also do the other things that they might want to do on the site with building expansion and landscaping and such? And they're going to have a retention pond as well.
And let me go back to Aaron if I could, because you were mentioning they could have additional parking. When you said that, I take it that you meant that along with the improvements that they're suggesting, they could have the improvements they want and add parking as well. Is that a correct statement? Is that what you were intending to say? Or did I misinterpret that in some way?
I'm intending to say that the code, if they were to propose this expansion, would require additional parking, and if they had to taper back their expansion to get the parking they need, that's generally what's evaluated during the site plan. So everybody looks at how they can sort that number, and if they were to have shared parking agreements and make up for some of the deficiencies in parking, then there wouldn't need to be as many on their own lot. But we haven't seen any agreements like that, just like the last applicant.
Right. The other thing, and if I can have, as I mentioned, just a little liberty on this,
Sure.
Commissioner Pritchett, there are a couple things that concern me, and I want to allow him to expand his business if it's at all reasonably possible. But whether the nearby businesses close at 5 or 2 or 6 or whenever, that may affect the public parking, and I get that, and I would factor that in terms of his patrons' ability to park. But with respect to the young lady that was up here before, who owned the strip mall nearby or adjacent to it, if she just doesn't want any of her parking used at any time during the day, any more than I have a right to park in your driveway, is it reasonable? It's up to her. It's her property. I'm not looking at telling her she should or shouldn't tolerate anything. But my concern is if there's room to accomplish what he's trying to accomplish while simultaneously adding some degree of parking. I'm not saying that we ought to require 28 parking spots. I think that's probably rather excessive, but it just doesn't seem that that's really been explored at this point. And I'm worried that if we approve this without conditioning it on some increase in parking, that we could have a situation where the neighbors now are having problems on account of this. So I don't have a problem with the expansion, but I do have a problem with the expansion given the staggering level of deficiency in comparison to where we were on number 4, on item number 4, being less than half this number of parking spaces as being appropriate.
That's incorrect. The number you're using is incorrect.
What part's incorrect?
28 new. That's incorrect.
In what way?
28 is the total.
Let me bounce that back to Aaron. Is the 28 parking spots, is that the total that's required for the existing and the expansion, or is that just for the expansion?
Just one second. I'm trying
Thank you.
to find that.
If I misstated that, I apologize. That was my impression. If I'm wrong, I do apologize.
I think the total calculated area is 2,800 square feet with 28 parking spaces required for that.
So what's the expanded area? Do we know that?
Yes, I have that somewhere in the staff report. I just need a moment.
Sure, please.
Well, it's 600 square feet is your proposed addition. Is that correct? 20 by 30?
That's correct.
So that would be 6 parking spaces for that.
Okay, so it's not as bad. That's a huge difference. Well, let me ask you.
Sarcasm.
Yeah. Do you have any?
Well, I'd like to respond to the. I thought I got to respond to the lady that had an issue.
You have a chance to rebut. Go ahead.
So we agree that there should be a sign. We put up a sign. We put a fence there. We put bamboo and palm trees to separate it. Anybody that comes in and asks us, we always tell them you can't park there. We've never had a complaint in 14 months. So if somebody parked there, no one ever complained to us so that we could take any action. So as far as we know, there hasn't been an issue. We don't want there to be an issue. That was the only business that had an issue, so we've tried to protect them. I
personally don't know, I don't mean to butt in, but I personally don't know how you control the actions of other individuals. I mean, you can ask them nicely, please don't park there.
They normally come in and ask.
But it would be up to the business to police their own parking lot, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
Through cameras.
And they could have cars towed. But I mean, we're trying to support it by having a sign. We're willing to put up another sign if that sign's gone. This is just, we've talked about the parking lot that is south That's the parking lot that right now is used as a parking lot every day of the year. And every night of the year, it sits there empty, and it's 30 feet from our front door. So to think that there's an issue with 5 or 6 parking spots when we have a street full of available parking, I can count 15 that are within 100 feet of our front door. We have a neighbor that allows us, we have that parking lot.
Whose lot is that?
Pardon?
Whose lot is that? Is that?
My understanding is that Myra, it's the county's, that it's not designated a parking spot, but it's used as a parking spot. But I'm not a county official, but that's what I understand.
Do you have questions?
It's not owned by the pharmacy, and it's not owned by you.
See, the concern that I have is it's great if it works out for some period of time, but my concern is if the folks that have just casually said, you can have your customers park here, if you have a falling out or if they get struck by lightning or attacked by a bear, whatever the case may be, and they're no longer the ones that own the business, then we're potentially in a situation where you're restricted, and these handshake agreements, although they may work for a period of time, potentially may cause this to come back to us or blossom into something unnecessarily complex. So my question for you, because I would be inclined to approve this and ask my colleagues to do the same if you could grant some additional number of parking spaces on that property. I'm not saying 28. I don't think that's...
Let me just, you didn't know the engineer. The engineer is Joe Mahler, who I guess is very, very well known in this county, and so when he gives us that number...
I think you were quoting, though, the site plan as well as the parking study, which is a big difference.
Yes, but it was primarily the parking, and the parking that we were told potentially if we took parking on the existing Valley Bar, which right now is pretty grass and a sidewalk, and the most we could get in there would be 5 spaces, which again would cost a lot of money. And I understand your concern, but just from a reality point of view, when you can walk out the front door and see 20 parking spots on a street that aren't used, for us to go to the expense to put in parking for 5, reduce the amount of space we have to put the pavilion, just seems like...
Let me ask you, because my thought with this, obviously we're going from 30 to 72 seats. I agree with what Commissioner Tobias stated, that there is some ride sharing. I hope there's a lot of ride sharing with your business.
Uber.
There's Uber, there's Lyft, there's whatever there may be.
Especially bars.
That's the whole point. With a bar, I'd really...
Bikes, there's walking. I mean, every one of those seats, every one of those 100-foot, square foot is not required a car right now.
If you believe you can fit in 5 spaces, but you believe that may be some impediment, I'd be inclined to move to approve this with you adding 3 spaces, which I think is a pretty reasonable compromise with this.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Our understanding is that requires a site plan. We asked him specifically that question, so.
Just to respond
I'm not real familiar with this area. Is it similar, and I'm asking the board as well, if you guys, is it similar to what we see in like downtown Melbourne? It's all street parking?
It's all angled parking all along the street. So that's why I'm saying there's 51 parking spots all along the street that our business is on.
So I know that we have standards, but those standards are designed for new businesses in a business area. This is totally different than this is public parking on public streets, and you have businesses that are lined up and down the street, I'm assuming. So I find it difficult to require a number of parking.
And I think our fault, and I don't mean to interrupt, but our fault is that we don't have a formula. And is it possible to get a formula? Maybe. Eventually we can come up with some sort of standard, but we don't have a standard. So to ask you to wait several months while we do a study to try to understand that area is not fair over 3 to 6 parking spaces.
If you used
so I agree with you,
Commissioner
Smith.
Tobias' percentage and said it was, if you said it was 15 to 20% for ride sharing, and let's say 15 to 20% for Uber, you don't need any parking spots, any additional parking spots.
Well,
And
I'll
I-
go on record as saying I'll support you, whoever wants to make a motion.
Commissioner Tobias?
Uber is part of ride sharing, so you can't add them up. Just for a point of clarity, so Uber falls in that category.
Okay.
So it's
when I
like
used was
Uber,
28 and
Lyft.
said 20% is 5, so, okay, we got one
So
spot and a bunch of spots.
I'm just going to kind
Is
of,
that it, Commissioner Tobias?
Yes.
I'm just going to kind of go back to what I said before. If you're amenable to 3 spots, I'm happy to make the motion and approve it that way.
We're not amenable to the 3 spots. We spent so much money buying that property and bringing the pavilion over. To put it in is just
Commissioner
a
Pritchett?
waste of our time and money.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, the problem is that you're adding another building on. If it was an existing building, because we have downtown areas too, and you already have that, and you got to share all the street parking. So it is going to add some flow and some traffic there. My problem is I'm not all that familiar with the area. If you already had the study back from Myra, it would help so much so that we can get an idea if we're going to cause harm to other businesses by adding this on. Now, like the other guy had a little bit of a play because he was going to do more of a nighttime business and all the daytime businesses were going to be gone. So it's a little more difficult with this because almost anybody who adds on has to find a way to meet code, but there might be a negotiation to make it a little bit easier because of the street parking. So I don't know, but I think your commissioner trying to come up with some kind of compromise seems like a good one. I don't know, does it cost that much to put in 3 parking spots on a property? Or what do you think? Does this have to be a whole lot of work on that? Can you throw a little gravel out in the dirt and let 3 cars park up in it?
I'd be happy with that too.
Yeah.
Well,
The challenge with the gravel and the dirt,
Okay.
and this is elaborated in your staff report, is it doesn't meet county code. The existing 10 parking spaces that are within the county right-of-way were improved not to county code. So we already, in front of their southern parcel, have a small liability going on. So we definitely cannot
Well, if they
just
did it
throw
on their
down
own
gravel.
property, we don't have the liability now, correct?
Then we can't count them.
so just a couple of clarifications. When you said it was a structure, when you use the term a building, it's not a building, it's like a deck.
Yeah, but
It's a deck with a roof with 8
We went through this
poles.
with squid lips, so as soon as you expand for people to eat in there and enjoy it, it really becomes one because it's a pavilion, so it's correct?
And we have met with this applicant many, many, many times and explained that the structure that they're proposing to add necessitates a site plan.
Oh.
It necessitates a site plan. There is not an option to add it without one. So that fee that he's quoting from an engineer will need, it has to happen, so that would potentially the parking spaces in that site plan. That's the mechanism that we have to expand a commercial business.
So I'm kind of with your commissioner right now with this. I understand his logic, and I think it's a lot of leeway with it because of the messy street parking.
And it is like 192. I'll add that as well because I've been to both. And, you know, if, for instance, I'm not trying to throw Meg O'Malley's under the bus, but if Meg O'Malley's wanted to add additional seating, I'd be very concerned about the impact that has, even though there is, within a reasonable walking distance, some parking that oftentimes people do use.
Is this situation like?
It's comparable. I mean, whether it's better or worse probably depends on the day you go.
The ball's in your court, pal.
Well, like I said, I'm not going to vote for it without any sort of condition on parking, but I'm happy to propose it with 3 additional spots. You said you could fit 5. I'm trying to give you as much leeway as I can while trying to protect the neighbors to a degree, and that's really the most I'm able to do. Otherwise, I'm just not able to support it at this point. If, as Commissioner Isnardi or Chair Isnardi said, you want to wait for a period of time, if there's a study done by Myra and they say you don't need any, I'm happy to support it without any, though.
I think it's difficult myself to hold this guy to any standard that we don't have. And we have our own non-conforming parking spaces. We can do our best guess, and it's not because we're neglectful, it's just because we don't have it. So to ask you to wait based on 3 to 6 parking spaces, if I can't find a place to park and I'm going to your business, and I can't find a place to park, I'm either not going to go, or I'm going to go somewhere else. So and if we're parking, if we have an illegal parking problem in that area, then that's a policing and patrolling problem. But unless people are blocking intersections, it's not really a safety issue. It's more of an issue of convenience. So, I mean, I hate to say it that way, you know, but...
I think
but
that's
it's,
a perfectly reasonable point. And when I want to go to Coconuts in Cocoa Beach, I park wherever I can, and I walk there.
I've done the same thing in downtown Melbourne. If I can't find a place
if it's a popular place, you walk 100 yards. What's the big deal? It's a popular place. And if it's not, and if you don't come, then you don't come. But
And I really don't know if there is a perfect solution and as far as studying goes, because those corridors are given the hours, and if you can't take the hours into account, then we wouldn't have any development down there at all. So I guess it's this commission's choice on whether or not we want you to expand your business, because I don't think it's significant enough to deny you myself. So I won't support a denial or forcing you to put 3 parking spaces in there, because that's about silly, in my opinion. I mean, to think 3 parking spaces are going to make a hill of beans of difference in the grand scheme of things. Anybody else?
Anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve this.
I'll pass the gavel, and I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. All right. Congratulations. 3-2, you
Motion
got it.
passes 3-2.
thank you.
And then maybe from here, we can, again, direct staff. I think Merritt Island is going to go and do a study, I guess, in that area. Myra is going to do a study. I guess it's going back to the Myra board. They agreed to do a study.
I'll talk with them, too, to see if I can...
We're going to bring forward their memo to this commission and let you know what they're recommending the scope of that study be.
Okay. Thanks.
And I'll speak with them as well and see if I can
Awesome.
get that fast track to a degree.
Item number 14 on the agenda is a proposal by James M. and Joanne M. Thomas requesting a change of zoning classification from RR1 to BU and BU1 to SR. This applicant is not in attendance at this meeting. They've requested the item be tabled, and that would be to the March 7th meeting. They're an out-of-town property owner, and they weren't able to make the planning and zoning meeting, so they weren't able to make a recommendation.
Okay, so can I get a motion, Commission?
Make a motion to table.
A motion by Commissioner Pritchett to table to the March
Second.
7th meeting, second by Commissioner Lober. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Now, before we do 15, item 15, can we take 5 to 7 minutes or so? Everybody take a quick break and stretch, and, all right.
Anyone want?